Welcome to the All the Stuff podcast, where we jam about money, clutter, and food, and the real stuff under this stuff. Join me, Lisa Carpenter, your resident food coach, along with my co-hosts, money coach Jen Turrell and clutter coach Lisa Sharp, as we help you release what's weighing you down and heal your relationship with food, money, and clutter from the inside out.
Welcome to this episode of All the Stuff. I am one of your hosts, Lisa Carpenter. I am here with Jen Turrell and Lisa Sharp. And today we wanted to dig into, or I specifically wanted to dig into, perfectionism and how much this keeps us stuck and how often we don't even identify that that is the thing at play in our lives. So in my life, perfectionism was a huge part of how I masked myself to the world. And the first time I realized how much perfectionism was playing a role in my life was an incredibly painful and uncomfortable story. So I'm going to share it because that's what I do here. And I've shared this openly before, so this isn't a new story for me to be sharing. So if you've heard it, just bear with me as we go through it again. This was at a point in time in my life where I really I was coming face to face with the things that were getting in my own way of me being connected with myself and with other people. My husband was in rehab at the time, and I had gone to a family program to learn more about my role, not my role in his addiction, but my role in our relationship and in my life. And we were sent home to do an exercise called the wall. And I highly encourage anybody listening to do this exercise because it was very eye-opening. We had to go home and we had to draw all these different blocks or bricks on a wall that stopped us from connecting with ourselves and connecting with others. So I thought, well, this is an awesome project. So I went out, I bought myself some pencil crayons, and I went home and I made my wall. And I was going to put everything in that damn wall because there was nothing I wanted to get called out for. There was going to be no stone unturned. I was going to lay it all out. So I had things in there from, my relationship with money, my relationship with clutter, yelling at my kids, being on my cell phone too much, being on Facebook too much, like everything. So we go into our group session. And we had to go around the room and everybody had to open their wall and hold it in front of them and let everybody in the room see your wall. So huge vulnerable moment, right? But I was like, I got this. Because I haven't missed anything and no one's going to call me out on anything, right? And everything was neatly colored and really, really pretty. And the first thing the counselor leads in and she says, so what do you guys notice about Lisa's wall? And immediately my brain is like, what do you mean? What do you notice? It's awesome. Like everything's on it. She's like, it's very pretty, isn't it? Immediately resistance. And I'm like, I went into resistance mode. I went into fight. Like, well, of course it's pretty. Like you asked us to do a project. I wanted to have fun with it. So I spun it in my way, right? Like this is all about self-care and getting in touch and our creative side, blah, blah, blah. So of course I went out and colored it and made it pretty because I was trying to have fun with it. And there was a part of me that really believed that story. And it was true. But the other part of me, the one in resistance, knew that there was more to it. And she had just nailed me so hard to the wall. And I was so pissed. And she's like, it's very pretty and it's very perfect. And I kind of sat back in my chair and had the wind taken out of me because it didn't matter what other block it was. It was literally like this big circle around my wall. And that was the first time I came face to face with how perfectionism was playing a role in my life. So in the industry that I work in, and I've grown up kind of being in health and fitness and wellness, a lot of it has to do with how you look. Like I was a fitness coach for years, right? So I had to look a certain way. God forbid I put on any weight because what if people judge me? It really wasn't about that. It was about me judging myself. But I literally used my physical appearance to keep people at arm's length from me. So if you were in my inner circle or one of my clients, you knew that I was warm and welcoming. But if I was out in the real world, what woman is going to approach me? I'm like that stereotype. I look like a Barbie doll. You would never guess in a million years that I spend, my days working with women who are struggling with their bodies and food and helping them make peace with that. And I had to really sit back and see like how much that was masking my insecurities and what I needed to do about it. So it came down to just being willing to be messy, recognizing that when I'm in the mirror brushing my hair for the 500th time that I'm probably like really nervous about something. I had to look at my business. Like I would spend hours agonizing over just the right words, just the right font, just the right margins, just the right banner, everything, and nothing was getting done. So perfectionism has really been a way that I've used to disconnect from myself. It's been a way that I use to procrastinate in my business. And now the way I see it with my clients as they're going through my program is perfectionism is the way that they stop themselves dead in their tracks, because if they can't get it right, if they can't be all in, then what's the point? And we talked about this a little bit in an episode we did on shame. Perfectionism it will destroy any progress you have. It's are you willing to get in, get messy, try your best, know that you can't get it right, know that you can't get it wrong. But I would love to hear from you guys. So this is how my clients, procrastinate, because they don't have everything perfectly done, or their containers, or they're like, Lisa, you just had to grab a snack. It certainly wasn't perfect, but it was really well done considering you don't have stuff prepped in the fridge, right? Having everything prepped, that's perfect, but that's not real life. It doesn't always happen that way. So I would love to hear how you guys see perfectionism show up in the areas of expertise you work in, and how you help your clients and yourself combat this, because I think we all have a certain level of perfectionism. We can call it overachieving. That's really like trying to shine it up and make it look pretty. It's still shit. It's still just perfectionism. So I would love for you guys to dig into this, share a story, and let's see what shakes out from this juicy conversation.
Yeah, I see this a lot with my clients when they're dealing with stuff. And the funny thing is that most of my clients will say that they're not perfectionists, that all you have to do is look at my space and you can see that I'm not a perfectionist, right? Because if a perfectionist would have all of their ducks in a row and everything perfect and shiny and lovely. But my clients have a lot of chaos, a lot of physical chaos in their lives. And so they'll say like, oh, I'm not a perfectionist. And I'm telling you, like 90% of my clients are perfectionists because they will be in the corner, like the house will be on fire behind them, and they're over there putting their markers back in Roy G. Biv and getting everything, like just so, or like there are these little pockets of like extreme order within their house. And it's that sort of unwillingness to be in the middle, to be in the gray, that keeps them in this really, really, dichotomous situation where it's either it's got to be perfect or never mind. I have to pay all my bills on time, or forget it. I'm a bad person. Da, 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 da. So, and I really do think that we all do this. I definitely do this in my own business. One of my issues is that I am very organized. You may know this about me, but my business is not really particularly well organized. And it drives me up a wall because, and this gets back to our shame episode, right? Because I'm supposed to be super organized. My personal stuff on it. My closet, organized. I know what my stuff is. I don't have a lot of clutter. I'm really, really conscious of the things that I bring into my space, into my life, blah, 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 blah. But my business, no. So, and this is something that I really struggle with perfectionism. Like I have to have the perfect system. It has to be a certain way. I need to be on my game all the time. And so that is absolutely my Achilles heel in my life with perfectionism. Now I've had some, and my business is not that much of a mess. I mean, it's really not. But for me, and I'm also a former librarian, so my brain just sort of puts things in categories.
Decimal.
And it's crazy that my business is not like that. But the thing is you know what I don't like? I don't like to do this. I personally do not like to do this. This is why when I work with clients, it's really organic. It is like, I am so not type A. I'm so like open-ended, do what, feels good for you, and that's the way that I run my own life. And that's the way that I encourage my clients to sort of let go of that rigidity. But, so my business is demonstrates that. That's the physical manifestation of the way that I believe it should be. But then I really struggle with that. So again, that perfectionism, keeps me from getting the help that I need in my business, because I think it should look a certain way. And then if I'm going to hand it off to somebody else to help me with some of these different aspects, that it needs to look a certain way, because I'm a professional organizer and space healer. Like, isn't that what I do? But we're not all things to all areas, and like running a personal life is very different from running a business. I mean, it's apples and oranges. They're just not the same thing at all. So just sort of stepping back from that and recognizing my own, like, it has to be this way is really destructive. It's not helpful. And that's definitely something that I work with my clients. Is like, well, how about if we just do a little bit of it, because people will be like, oh my God, my house is such a total mess. And then they start working one area and they're frustrated because they're not seeing the improvement that they think that they should be having by X number. It's the same thing with weight loss, same thing with debt reduction, money, that sort of thing. Like, we always want to be further along than where we really are, and just being okay with, like, I'm making progress, or this is where I am today, or just sort of letting down the shoulds, I think that's the absolute key with perfectionism. And I've actually learned a lot about it from working with you, Lisa, because with food in particular, but it really I've been able to extrapolate a lot of that goodness that you coach on into my personal life and into my own business, where it's like not automatically picking up the stick, as you like to say, where you're beating yourself over the head with whatever it is that you think that you're doing wrong or that isn't good enough or whatever. And just sort of being more comfortable with being in the middle of, like, like me telling you guys that my business is not perfectly organized would be a pretty good example of, it just is what it is,
The shades of gray, the willingness to be with the progress instead of the perfectionism, and getting started. Because when you're trying to do things perfectly, what ends up happening is you just don't start. Right. So how about you, Jen?
Well, listening to your guys' stories, I had a couple things come to mind. The first one's not personal at all. It is, oh, I'm so sorry, I did not silence.
See, and that is so perfect that it rang. Because that's the kind of stuff that goes down.
Absolutely.
Funny things is, because I do, the Financial Fluency podcast, I am so conditioned to, I usually actually put it on airplane mode while I do that and turn my other things off, which obviously I was distracted and didn't do it. But I was thinking of a story Ramit Sethi talks about with a woman who wanted to run 3 times a week. And if she could, and he said, well, why don't you start with once a week? And she's like, well, what's the point of that? Like, I'm not going to see any changes. And I thought that was such a good example of us getting in our own way of progress, where it's like, well, if you start running once a week, it's like flossing one tooth. I don't know if you've heard that story in The Power of Habit. Like, just floss one tooth. But once you have the floss out, you might as well floss them all. They all need flossing, right? So once you get used to running once a week and you get over the soreness that first time, like, and you start feeling some endorphins and it gets good, you might start running more times per week. But the idea that once a week is useless can stop a lot of people from getting the workout regime or whatever. And then the other thing I thought of as I was listening to you, Lisa Sharp, talking about people's stuff was I have a very interesting family. There is a fair amount of autism. My kids have autism. I had an uncle who was probably autistic, and when he passed away shortly before my daughter was diagnosed, so I never got to talk to him about it. We went to his house, my husband and I did, and he was a hoarder, and it was really interesting looking at the parts of the house that were in complete chaos. And then he also collected toy trains, really fancy, intricate, amazing toy trains, most of which were preserved inside of the packaging still, stacked and kept clean and organized and pretty perfect. Like, he had this one area that was his art studio and his train area. And all of that stuff was in a reasonable state. Whereas inside the house, there was years worth of unopened mail. There was, because it was out on our ranch where we don't have regular trash pickup, you have to haul your trash. He would stack things like what he bought the cat food in. There were hundreds of the package that the cat food came in. Wow. And these different things, these different types of containers. And I wasn't sure if he was saving them for something or if it was just his way of storing them. But I mean, it was something that could have been on a hoarder's show probably, just because it was pretty extreme. You know, it was several years worth of things. And it did make me think, we have both, along with the autism, there's some obsessive compulsiveness in my family too. And I've always thought of myself as honestly the kind of more mediocre, more normal person, because some of these people who are a bit obsessive or geniuses, like one of my uncles is a literal rocket science. He works for, the Jet Propulsion Laboratories in Pasadena. And, my father's this artist who has done all these amazing things. But they also have this sort of very obsessive compulsive side. And I've never felt the obsessive compulsive side. While I see it around me, people who are very perfection oriented, but achieve it in certain ways. I've always looked at those things and just been like, I don't know how they do it. But at the same time, there's one area in my life where I feel like it has completely stopped me. And that is, I've always wanted to be a writer, an author. I've always wanted to write fiction. And because we have some relative geniuses in my family, I have always felt that what I consider my true art would have to be really good. Like, I can't put out a bad first novel. I can't put out a bad short story. So that I've really let it stop me. But in so many other areas, I can see that I haven't. And one of my greatest teachers in all of this has been my husband, who we've both been in indie music forever. And I always liked indie music because you didn't have to be a virtuoso. Like, the point of indie rock is that it's it's kind of the current folk music, the people's music. Anyone can get on GarageBand and sing over something. You can, you don't even need instruments anymore. GarageBand can do it all for you. You can basically anyone can make a song and say something with it. And you don't have to be even as good as America's Got Talent or any of those things. But when I met my husband and I would see him, we have people come to our studio and record a 7-inch in a day or an album in 4 days, a weekend. He is the one take wonder kind of guy. He loves live music. He thinks mistakes are happy, and he often never listens to what he records again. I mean, he's been on hundreds of commercially released releases at this point across all different bands. He usually plays somewhere on the records that he records for people too. And to him, it's just like, it's this very ongoing thing. Like, why would I re-listen to it? Like, once the record's made, it's out there. And that was a real lesson for me of the complete opposite of perfection. To him, it's just like capturing the moment rather than perfection. So while I'd like to say I'm not a perfectionist, that one area of feeling like I have to do something great if I'm a writer, like a literature, fiction, real writer, not just nonfiction stuff, that definitely has stopped me because I've been stopped there.
I think we each have lots of layers. Like, there's some areas in my life where I can be more of a perfectionist, and that's really been a problem for me. And then there's other areas where I'm not, but I can say with all honesty that the biggest transformation in my life and my business has been the more I challenge myself to put down the perfectionism. So quite often, and you guys both know this, I rarely listen back to my podcast interviews. I do a ton of podcast interviews, rarely listen to them back. I learned to take all my videos, even for my courses, one take. They're generally not scripted. Nothing I do is scripted, because when it's scripted, it just sounds like so I don't do it.
Can mess up if you have a script.
I know
the script.
So
right?
it's rare for me to use a script unless it's something really, really important, and I know I need to articulate a certain point. Mm-hmm. But there's so much freedom that has come from that. But it meant that I had to be willing to put down the judgment that I was carrying about myself. So, Jen, I would challenge you. You're stripping all the fun out of writing this book, right? You really are. You're not even allowing yourself permission to dip your toe in it. So I would highly recommend just saying, like, well, what would it feel like to just write this? Because guess what? The first book, it might be crap. I can look back on some of my videos, and some of them, they're not so good. Like, I can look at them now, but I like to be able to see how far I've evolved. And I don't look back to beat myself up now when I do look back. It's more to celebrate and acknowledge, like, I did that thing and it wasn't perfect. And I stepped through that, and I'm going to continue to grow and change and evolve. And when it comes to my clients, all those small things matter. So I don't care if you ate, a whole chocolate cake in the day. If you had one meal that you had some good quality protein, some vegetables, some healthy fats, you really nourished your body, you sat down, you made the time to eat, that's a win, and that's enough. It doesn't really matter about the rest of the day. So putting down perfectionism actually allows you to celebrate your small victories. And perfectionism wants to steal those from you and rob you from claiming any type of forward movement. So I'm a huge believer in I watch for it, I listen for it with my clients, because a lot of people, like Lisa said, they think they're not perfectionists, and they are. Even in terms of getting rid of clutter. Half the time I don't start because I'm like, I don't know where to start. Instead of just starting and throwing out 3 things and not worrying about the rest. I had somebody in my class just post about how she's been sitting on stuff for years and years and years, and she finally just sat down and went, okay, I can hear Lisa in my head. Done is better than perfect. I'm just going to get it done. And she feels so much better now that she released it. But she was standing under this, so the overachievers of the world, we put, and I'm speaking for myself, we put so much value on that overachieving and reaching for that high bar. But the truth is that high bar, it's the same as perfectionism. It still robs us of ever really feeling like we're achieving anything, because it's never really good enough. There's always the next layer we can go to. We get close to the bar and we move it again. So it's even with my debt repayment. Well, if I can't just pay off the whole damn credit card, what is $50? Like, what's $50 going to make? Like, come on. What's the point?
That is true.
That?
You know what? That is something that I run into quite a bit, is people wanting a lump sum solution.
Yes.
If they have that, they don't want to start on a real program that'll figure it out. So, I did an episode on financial fluency about that, where it was, I hope everyone does have a windfall, lump sum, big launch, something like that works for them. But in the meantime, because if you're a perfectionist especially, it could take you another year to get that launch done, because you want the perfect videos and the perfect Facebook ads and the perfect copy and all of that. Those things take a long time. And, I think it's interesting too, because for a long time, I think people thought of perfectionism as an asset. When people would put you're filling out a job application and they're like, what are your strengths? What's your weakness? And it would be kind of like a backhanded compliment to yourself to be like, oh, my biggest weakness is I'm a perfectionist and I always want everything to be just so. Right. I have so much attention to detail. So they're trying, they're acting like it's a drawback, but they're trying to say, actually, I'm so amazing that everything has to be perfect, when the truth is that really can stop you from getting things done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's so true. So yeah, I think I want to ask you guys before we wrap up, what is one thing that you would encourage your clients? You're on a client call right now and they don't even know where to begin. What's one thing that they could do that you think would be a good place to start? Obviously that's this is like micro step. I love micro steps.
I love micro steps.
They're really awesome. Too. So what's your micro step in your areas?
The first thing that I would ask people to do, especially if they're struggling with weight and food, is do a food journal. But what does this have to do with perfectionism? Don't change anything that you're eating to try and make your food journal perfect, or don't not log your food because it's not perfect. So it's a really great exercise in just allowing yourself to become conscious. Be conscious of how much the voice is in there saying, well, if you're not going to eat perfectly, why would you write this down? Or are you really going to write this down because you look how good you did all day long and then you had a bag of cookies or whatever it is. So that's kind of my first tip, is just allow yourself to be conscious without judging it and see what comes up for you. Pay attention to how much perfectionism really plays a role, and call it what it is. Acknowledge that it is in the room with you and how much it's moving you, or how much it's keeping you from moving forward. So, in my own business now, I am so aware of it that I can call myself out on it. So when I'm obsessing over a PDF, it's kind of like, okay, Lisa, you need to push away from the computer and let this go and then come back. So I'm able now to change my thinking. I can see, okay, this is what's going on for me, and then change it. And that's where I have all my clients start, is to just acknowledge the other things that are here, because it's not just the food, like you're capable of all that stuff, but what are the things that are getting in the way of you actually implementing some changes? Mm-hmm. And all or nothing does not work for my program. It just doesn't. Like, you have to come in, you have to be willing to have a learner's mindset. You have to be willing to get messy. You have to be willing to get scraped knees. And, just like you're learning to ride a bike, it's going to be ugly before it gets, easy breezy. So they have to be willing to step into acknowledging that perfectionism is in the room and just starting to change their self-talk. How about you, Jen?
I have so much resistance to food journals. I have to tell you that. What finally worked for me to get a bit of a food journal was an app where I could just take a picture of my food.
Yeah, absolutely.
That works so much better. For some reason, the writing it down, and especially because I have lots of kids' therapies, activities, gymnastics, all those things I go back and forth to, and I do grab things and I graze. So that was the closest I got.
That's a great way to do it, and that's what I ask people to do. Like, you can write it down, you can take a picture, find an app. I don't care, but just find a way, because people will use the not having the perfect way to log as a way to not log.
Yeah, and if you forget something, oh well.
Nobody dies.
And you've just forgotten. Oh well.
But see, my fascination with new apps, like I love productivity apps. I love things that help you do things. So the fact that I got a new app to do, it's called $100,000 or some 200 or $2,000. I think that was what I started with. Take a picture. And I was like, okay, so at least it shows you the portion size. We can kind of guess what's in there. I can tell you what's in there. But so that was one way around it for me. And I feel like people have a similar resistance to tracking their money as I have to tracking my food. But the fact that we so often now use our phones to pay for things, PayPal, Stripe, Amazon, credit cards, things that are electronically linked. The first place I ask people to start is to download a tracking app. I like mint.com because you can put all of your different things in there. And basically it's the same thing. It's to get clarity on what you're doing. Because with money, just like with food, if you aren't keeping conscious track of what you're doing, it's so easy to not have any idea quite how many cookies you ate or quite how many chips or any of those things. And without knowing what you're doing right now, it's hard to make changes. So getting a tracking app that you put everything into that sucks in all your transactions. And if you do use cash, that is a hard one. Like, I was talking to my hairdresser the other day, and we were talking about quarterly taxes and her finances and stuff, because we talk a lot when she does my hair. And she was talking about the cash, when people pay cash, like, they have a cash discount because they're not running it through the credit card and all that, and how that's different. And I was like, oh, so not that I want to get my hairdresser in trouble, but she kind of keeps it outside of any tracking. And I was like, that is so hard. And I don't do that. Like, if I do get cash, I take it out of an ATM and I can see exactly how much I've brought. I don't have any sort of cash in hand business. If you have a cash in hand business, are you using that to hide from yourself what your real spending is? Because it's so easy for us to hide. It's such a good question. We have so many little areas that money can go into. So I like having one place that you suck all the transactions.
Yeah.
I put business and personal, all of that in there, so you can actually get an overview.
Oh, wow.
Of all the transactions across all of your accounts. So I think clarity is a good place to start. And then, there are plenty of mini steps you can start taking to make things better. But just knowing exactly what's coming in and what's going out is a really great place to start.
Well, for me with the money, I had to just start with logging what was coming in. That's where I had to start. And that had to be good enough and not stress about the rest until I was ready to go, okay, and now the next thing, and now the next thing. And because, again, it was about diffusing, well, if I can't do this perfectly, I'm never going to get ahead. I'm never going to pay off this debt, which just really wasn't the truth. So, yeah.
Some people really don't know exactly what they make, because as soon as something comes in, it gets sucked out too. So you feel like, you could be making quite a bit and feel like you're really hand to mouth, when it's because it gets spent on something. And if you see the accumulated amount, especially if you have multiple sources of income throughout the month, to see like, oh, wow, I actually did make $9,000. Like, where the hell did it go? And then you can start checking, oh, where the hell did it go? And do I want it going there? Do we want it going somewhere else? Because there are times when people make much more than they think they do, but it just...
Oh, it's so true.
It comes into PayPal and goes out of PayPal before you bring it into your account. So you don't even, it feels outside of a system. So bring it all into one system so you can see. And what about you, Lisa? What's your first tip?
Mine is not a tracking thing, but I love that both of you went with that, just because it's it's so good to be conscious, right? And that's the whole point. It's not even changing your behavior. It's just becoming aware of your behavior. And so my tip would be to clear off your bedside table.
Oh, can you see into my room?
Can you
see into my room?
People ask me if I'm psychic all the time.
Damn
I assure you I am not. I have just seen it thousands of times. So bedside table is really a very small, very easy place to clear out. So give yourself 15 minutes, set a timer. I am a strong advocate of timers. They motivate you to move faster and they don't let you rabbit hole. So the whole point is like 15 minutes, and this is an excellent way to get away from the perfectionism thing, because we tend to like, if I'm gonna spend the time cleaning up my bedside table, I'm gonna clean it, I'm gonna dust it, and I'm gonna get out the floorboards, and I'm gonna be, you can turn this into like a 2-hour project. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to have one clear area. So set a timer for 15 minutes, not a second more.
Got it.
Just do 15 minutes and, wipe it down and clear it out. See what you have next to your head as you sleep for 8 hours a night. What is the last thing that you see as you close your eyes? What is the first thing you see when you open them? Right. So look at like what sort of heavy crap is next to your desk. And by heavy, I mean like energetically heavy. Do you have a bunch of work stuff? Are you automatically doing work? I'm definitely guilty of this. But what does it look like? Try to like tell the story of the stuff that you have next to your bed. Some of it will be super practical. You'll have tissues and balm and that kind of stuff. And P.S., do you need to have an entire pharmacy next to your bed? Likely you do not. But, think about what do you actually need, love, use, and that you really only need to have like one of those, not 15 of those things, pens, pads of paper, journals, that sort of stuff. So just kind of call it, spend 15 minutes, give it a Windex, walk away, and then maintain it.
Now, do you still have your free challenge going on around your mini? Is that still running?
I'll put that in the show notes. So I have Lisa's referring to a 7-day 100 item decluttering challenge where we systematically go through your entire house and in 15-minute increments. Seriously, I'm very hardcore on this issue. Just going through and strategically cleaning out different areas of your home so that your daily life, as you're negotiating life, you're going into the bathroom, you're in your bedroom, you're in your kitchen, you're in the living room, that these little areas get cleared out so that you can move more gracefully through life instead of, this doesn't work. There's too much crap here. That's my goal, is to get you this way.
Perfect.
Yeah. Awesome.
So awesome conversation again. For anybody who wants to continue this conversation, please hop over to our Facebook group. We'll put that in the show notes as well. If you're following us on iTunes, please remember to rate and review and share. Did I miss anything?
Subscribe.
And subscribe.
And review.
That's so important. Subscribe. And we will be back next week for another topic. So I will see you ladies next time.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.